So far we've talked about pure competition and monopoly. They are at opposite ends of the spectrum. Now we're going to fill in talking about monopolistic competition and oligopoly. In terms of the spectrum and the amount of competition, monopolistic competition is next to pure competition. The characteristics are somewhat similar. There are many sellers. There are low barriers to entry. There is limited market power, meaning that they can raise their price a little bit and not lose a whole lot of customers. And the way that they try to raise their price without losing customers is to differentiate their product. Many times that is done through advertising. It may be with a little bit unique feature in terms of their product, but it is this differentiation that allows them to have a little bit of market power. The graph of monopolistic competition is somewhat similar to the graph for monopoly. The demand curve is downward sloping. The marginal revenue curve, as a result, sits below the demand curve. We include our marginal cost and our average total cost curves in order to allow us to recognize if there is any profit. And in the short run, there is economic profit. Our profit maximizing output is still where marginal revenue intersects marginal cost. In the long run, we will note that all of the economic profit is squeezed out, and that's because of the characteristics of monopolistic competition, which is low barriers to entry, a product that has many substitutes, and the fact that there is some knowledge within the industry so that they know when they're making profit and people will enter the industry. We recognize in the long run that price is still greater than marginal cost. You see where marginal cost intersects the demand curve is below the profit maximizing price. Profit maximizing is where marginal revenue intersects marginal cost, and that vertical line intersecting or dropping down to the horizontal curve and going up to the demand curve tells us where price and output are going to be in terms of profit maximizing. And we recognize that that price is above where marginal cost intersects the demand curve and where marginal cost intersects the minimum of the average total cost curve, and price is above both of those. So it's not exactly as good in terms of allocative efficiency and productive efficiency as we talked about in terms of pure competition, but still looks pretty good as we can see from the graph. Again, just to review, in the short run, there is economic profit. In the long run, all that economic profit will get squeezed out, but they will be earning accounting profit or normal profit. And we recognize that in the long run, average total cost is just tangent to the demand curve, just tangent to the demand curve at the price that is profit maximizing. Now moving on to oligopoly. Oligopoly is still imperfect competition, as is monopolistic competition and monopoly. In the case of oligopoly, 3 or 4 firms control or basically have 60 to 70% of the market share. So as you see the red, yellow, blue, and green, you can see that there are 4 major firms that control almost all of the market, but the green, blue, and yellow would certainly be 60 to 70% of the market. So again, the idea of oligopoly is that 3 or 4 major firms control 60 to 70% of the market. In terms of oligopoly, we recognize that they are almost copycatters. They're so afraid to lose market share that if one firm has a lower price and selling at a lower price, the other firm will sell at that price. So in this particular case, this graph, which we refer to as the kinked demand curve, just shows maybe 2 of the 3 or 4 oligopolists, and to make the graph more simple. So we see that they will always follow the lower price. In other words, the demand curve that has the lower price. Hence the demand curve that is lower up to point A is going to get the lower price, and then where they intersect after point A, then it's going to go with the other demand curve. Because in oligopoly the firms are so interdependent, a whole academic discipline was created in terms of what we refer to as game theory. The idea is that if there are two firms, and we use two firms just to make it simple, and each of them are competing, and each of them have a major market share, they are concerned about what the other firm is doing. But because they are an oligopoly type of structure, there are laws, antitrust laws, against oligopolists colluding with each other. They are to act independently of each other, and acting independently, in other words, they can't collude, it's illegal. Acting independently, what is the best strategy that they can pursue in order to maximize profit or minimize their loss? Hence, we have this idea of game theory. This is a payoff matrix where we have two firms, and the payoff for each of the strategies that they might pursue is shown in this payoff matrix. Starbucks is shown on the top. San Francisco Coffee is shown on the bottom. So it shows if they both advertise, if one advertises and the other doesn't advertise, and if neither advertises, what the payoff is. As a result of trying to maximize profit and minimize loss, it turns out that they will both advertise, even though it is a lower payoff than if one advertised and the other didn't, or if neither of them advertised. Again, they cannot collude, they don't know what the other is doing, and so they will pursue that strategy that will again minimize their loss and maximize their gain. In terms of monopoly and oligopoly, particularly with regard to oligopoly, government is concerned if there are mergers. A vertical merger means that they are perhaps going backwards or forwards. And on my little PowerPoint illustration here, I showed a vertical merger where perhaps some of the parts for motorcycles are made at a factory and bought from a different company, but after the merger, the company that is selling the motorcycles has merged with the company that is producing some of the parts for the motorcycles, hence a vertical merger. A horizontal merger would be more like two retailers of motorcycles merging together, a horizontal merger. A conglomerate merger is where, as I've illustrated, two companies that wouldn't be considered to be in the same business merge with each other, such as the cruise line business and such as a drug company. The red flag occurs with the horizontal merger, and that's where the government steps in and either will allow or disallow two major companies to merge. A measure that they use to take a look at mergers where there is a horizontal merger is referred to as the Herfindahl index. So the government will take a look at companies that are planning on merging together to see what the result of the Herfindahl index will be. As an example of the Herfindahl index, I have 4 companies here showing the market share that each might have. So company 1, 30%, company 2, 20%, company 3, 10%, and company 4, 10%. The Herfindahl index basically takes each of their individual market shares and raises them to the second power, adds them together, and results in a number. So taking a look at these 4 companies, if we add together 30 squared plus 20 squared plus 10 squared plus 10 squared, that equals 1,500. Usually the federal regulators who are looking at these numbers to determine whether or not the concentration ratio is high enough to be concerned about antitrust policy, that typical number for the red flag is 1,800. Thanks for listening.